We're recording. Guys, what's up? Welcome back to the Inner Circle. I have a very special guest today, one that you guys don't know about. It's the best hidden secret that IM3 Nutrition has, and her name is Amanda Stegman. So, hi, how are you?
Nervous, but
hilarious.
Thank you for welcoming me to do this and teach you guys some stuff. I hope
when we did the pre-show, she called her dog a bitch, and she asked if she could say penis in the interview. And obviously, you guys know, because we're not always super family friendly, that yes, both are super accepted on this video. So that's how we'll open. You're a rock star. Guys, just so that you know, as we've built IM3, you know, I'm not a registered dietitian. I do have a college degree in the subject, but I did not go get my RD. Amanda went and did the RD route. She is the RD on our staff, and so if we ever have to put out meal plans, she's the one that does it. But more importantly, she's a phenomenal wealth of knowledge for every single one of my coaches. And so, you know, I get a lot of crazy ideas that I want to test, and sometimes I'll ask her, like, well, what are your thoughts on this? And sometimes she'll tell me I'm an idiot, but you know, that's how we roll. So she's written some great articles for the team, and so what this is every month her and I are going to choose at least two, perhaps more in the future. We're going to choose research articles, and we're going to analyze them. We're going to talk about their application in terms of nutritional protocols and nutrition coaching. And so the reason we're doing this is, guys, running a nutrition coaching business is not super simple. Obviously, you got to get leads in, you got to coach the clients, you got to worry about your social media, you got to worry about paying your coaches, you got to worry about paying yourself, you got to do your taxes, right? You do all the shit that happens with running a business. And so finding free time to continually educate yourself is hard enough, let alone digging into scientific literature that sometimes looks like Greek, and sometimes you don't even know which literature to dig into. And so our commitment to you is every month we're going to find some studies that are applicable to our world that you can begin citing, that you can begin using, and that you can begin reading to further your knowledge. So all that long-winded intro, we're going to get going. Sorry to bore you with that, Amanda, but here we go. The first one we have is on cortisol impairment, correct?
Yes.
And so we were talking off air. I told her openly and honestly, I did not read these because I want to come at it from the angle of you guys that are just getting into this. And so, Amanda, tell us a little bit about how the study was performed, and it immediately started sending like light bulbs off in my head. So tell us about the study, and then I'm going to ask you a few questions. We'll go over application.
Sure. So just to sum up what cortisol is, it's a steroid hormone released by the adrenal cortex in response to stress and low blood sugar. What it does in your body is it increases blood sugar through gluconeogenesis, which is breaking down protein to provide stream. It suppresses the immune system, and it aids the metabolism of fat, protein, and carbohydrates, so all essential functions for a CrossFitter. What this study wanted to see is the effect on endurance, training, exercise, on hormonal cortisol levels after a period of 20 weeks. So subjects were asked to engage in either, what was that called again?
The leg extension.
Yeah, leg extensions at 90-degree angles or 50% of that, or engage in like moderate intensity exercise via cycling. And what it found was,
I think it's really funny that they always use the leg extension as the modality of training, by the way.
I think it's funny that I had to do this to ask you what it is. And here's the answer. Thanks. Because traditionally, previous studies show that exercising a lot will increase cortisol levels. Could be a good thing,
sure,
but there's also theories it could be a bad thing because it could break down muscle, like that gluconeogenesis thing I mentioned. So, this study, and forgive me while I read my notes.
Yeah, no, do it.
Essentially, cortisol decreased after exercise. Not a bad thing, not significantly. So
wait, hold on. So like blood serum cortisol. Like we're not talking localized to the training session, right? Like we're talking blood serum cortisol.
Blood serum cortisol. You're right. Blood samples were taken at the beginning of this 20-week study, and then at the end of the 20-week study, and people were to engage in the leg extensions or bike riding 4 times a week over the course of 20 weeks.
So you're saying that irregardless of the modality of exercise, consistent exercise over time, when not controlled for other recovery variables, I think it's very important to express, like,
yes.
Limitations of the study have to be like sleep quality, food quality, nutrient intake. That's definitely a limitation of the study.
This did not include any mention of nutrient intake. They could have been eating ketos for all we know.
Right. So I definitely think that's a big limitation. But assuming the information that we have from this study, exercise consistently over the course of 20 weeks actually brings overall cortisol down, which affects the DHEA to cortisol ratio, so testosterone to cortisol ratio.
For all the men out there, that's a good thing.
Well, all the men out there, but also anybody out there, right? Because when we're talking HPA function, we're talking in lab work a measure of DHEA to cortisol. Like, that's how classically adrenal fatigue was diagnosed. And so when that number is shifting, we're starting to see people move towards potentially being overtrained or under-recovered, may be a better term for it, in just 20 weeks. So that's number one. That corroborates everything that we as coaches kind of preach and kind of talk about. So keep going.
So what happened with these participants over the course of these 20 weeks is their lactic threshold increased significantly by 19%, which is huge. So everyone ended up being in better shape. Their skeletal muscle performance was more improved in the subjects whose cortisol levels changed the least. And the reason I'm highlighting that is because, like I said, how cortisol can be it's an important hormone, but it's also a stress hormone. So the people who improve their physical fitness the best have the greatest hormonal stability.
Love that. Okay, so one thing that we talk with all of our clients about, guys, is controlling that cortisol response. And so whether it be post-workout carbohydrates, like we're going to talk about in the next study, or whether it be getting more sleep, eating adequate carbohydrate throughout your day, controlling your hormone profile statistically significantly shows that you adapt better to the training stimulus. Guys, that's massive. So the CrossFitters out there, remember, they're going in, they're training, they're looking to get better times. Those better times are adaptations. If they want to adapt to training faster, they have to control their hormones. They have to control cortisol. This study proves it. Guys, do not be afraid to cite the study. I love it. Keep going.
Sure. Just the biggest takeaway from this, so the ratio of cortisol to testosterone increased a little bit because your cortisol levels stayed stable. They decreased just a little, so you have essentially the ratio to testosterone is increased, which is a great thing for performance. And the greatest improvement in performance was correlated to the smallest changes, which means one could infer from this specific study that stable hormones equal better performance, and stressing muscles to absolute exhaustion can increase cortisol slightly, but then over the time of improving your performance, it stabilizes. So I was telling Jason, you guys in on a secret, you can probably tell I don't do CrossFit. So if I were to engage in this kind of activity on a one-time thing, like do some massive dumbbell lifts and throw tires across the room, my cortisol would probably increase one isolated incident. But for people who do this to perform, who are athletes who do this over a period of time, as your performance increases, your cortisol levels kind of stable off, if not even slightly decrease. So you have less of this like intense high stress hormone that makes you break down proteins circulating through your bloodstream.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because when we start looking at an overall decrease in cortisol, cortisol being that fight or flight hormone, cortisol being that hormone that actually allows us to create that sympathetic drive. Guys, the study shows, and this isn't directly discussed in the conclusion of the study, but I think that we need to take a step back. We need to think critically a little bit. If cortisol sums are decreasing, and if we're affecting our HPA in any way, we're also affecting our ability to create sympathetic drive. And so when you're doing a workout that, let's say, is meant to be 2 minutes in nature, every second matters. And your ability to go really deep into redline and to create sympathetic drive has to be present, right? And so if we're not in the situation where we have enough cortisol to elicit that fight or flight response, we're actually going to only perform at 80 to 90%, and you're not going to be finishing within 1 second of the winner. You're going to be 10 or 12 seconds behind. So there's so many nuggets from this study. It's not a direct application to CrossFit, and I think that's actually the beauty of it, is we have to take a step back as a population, as a group of coaches, and we have to look at it, and we have to say, okay, great, like what can we take from this and apply it to our sport? And there's so many pieces here. Hormonal stability is massively important. That's something that we harp on. Maintaining adequate cortisol to meet the demands of what we're doing on a day-to-day basis is super important. So we need to be doing that, right? Having less cortisol will impair performance long-term. We need to be making sure of that. So this is a really good study that crosses over into our world.
And the cool part is they didn't even talk about what these clients or participants were eating. So theoretically, I'm sure because they work out, but what if they were eating cheeseburgers and Cheetos all day, every day, which is what
I think that's actually one of the biggest limitations of the study. So I think that I would love to know, I think if we actually took the same group and then we split each subgroup, right, in half. So we took the cyclists in half and we split the leg extension guys in half, and we gave half of them like a caloric surplus and half of them a caloric deficit. How would that change the adaptation?
I smell study future.
I have no interest in funding studies, and I have no interest in being in the lab, but I really think that more studies in this realm need to be done, because I think that we're all starting to see, whether it be bodybuilding, whether it be aerobic capacity, whether it be CrossFit, I think we're starting to see the importance of hormones and cortisol really come into play. But again, I'm not sure that it necessarily teaches us anything new, although it corroborates a lot of what we discussed. And I think that as a community of coaches, I think it's very cool to see our line of thought supported in literature. And I think it reinforces the need to do things like have a post-workout carbohydrate shake to keep cortisol in check, which is the perfect segue into our next study.
Our next study.
Because our next study
well,
is
thank you.
Timing. And I kind of did that on purpose. Like, that was a good segue. You got to give me that.
Well played. Okay, everyone, hang on. All right.
So Amanda's going to get her notes organized.
I got to get my notes.
Not all the notes. Like, that's what a scientist does.
Oh, my God. That's what a type A person does.
That's why we rely on you for our content.
So, okay. The next one is called Nutrient Timing Revisited. Is there a post-exercise anabolic window? So
I'm going to pause you for 1 second.
Sure.
And the question posed by the study is there a post-workout exercise anabolic window? Remember, guys, in CrossFit, we're not talking about anabolism very frequently, right? Especially like if an athlete is preseason or in season. Remember back to nutritional periodization. We're not really caring about anabolism. We do care about catabolism, and we do care about hormonal function, but building muscle pre-workout preseason or in season doesn't matter that much. However, this is extremely applicable to the off season, and you'll start to see there's some nuggets that are applicable in season as well. So just wanted to make that point. Keep going.
Cool. So this was not an individual study, everybody. This was actually a litany of 7 different studies, reviewing the results of 7 different studies that examined this phenomenon. So for anyone who needs a refresher about glycogen is this like highly branched carbohydrate primarily in your liver and also in your muscles. So what this study has several bullet points I'm going to share with you, which is 1, so the type of working out bodybuilding, that sort of intense stuff, it burns your glycogen stores a lot faster. And replenishing with carbohydrates increases the glycogen resynthesis by 50% compared to waiting 2 hours. So that's essentially saying that the glycogen that you burn gets resynthesized much faster when you eat carbs immediately after versus waiting 2 hours.
So basically what we're saying and what we teach all the time is glycogen synthesis and resynthesis absolutely will take place over the next 24 to 36 hours. Like, we know that. But you can enhance that process and you can speed it up. You're not going to make it happen in the post-workout window, but you can speed it up by ensuring that there's carbohydrates in that post-workout window. That's what
correct.
I'm
And this is suggesting doing that immediately, like ingesting carbohydrates immediately rather than waiting 2 to 5 hours. It increases
So
the.
what we typically recommend is like
50%.
within 15 minutes. I think that would classify as immediately.
Immediately, yes, correct. It'd be hard to lift a dumbbell and lift a granola bar at the same time. So
I would try it.
15 minutes would be great. And then the beautiful part about this is that in this situation, adding protein to carbohydrates increases your glycogen stores compared to carbohydrates alone. So the combination of protein and carbohydrates post-workout, it does this beautiful thing. It causes insulin to be released, and that presence of insulin in your bloodstream can reverse the effects of breaking down muscle after engaging in a workout.
So as we know, training in and of itself is a very catabolic time. So this is actually going to prevent overall catabolism. So in periods of really intense training, it's going to prevent muscle loss. I believe when we were talking before, you also said it's going to enhance the rate of muscle protein synthesis as well. Is that correct?
It is.
So it is going to allow for any formation of new lean tissue, even, all things controlled, potentially it's going to maximize that, even in a slight calorie deficit. I don't think you're going to build a new lean tissue in a calorie deficit, but you are going to help prevent the loss of lean tissue and keep whatever lean tissue you have stable.
So the next study actually saw that carbon helps muscle synthesis after resistance training, and protein synthesis can increase 3 times faster when carbs and protein are ingested immediately after. Because again, this study is looking at like the nutrient timing, whether you want to wait a few hours or do it immediately or the next day because you're starving, you just worked out, let's be serious. But eating immediately after that carbohydrate protein combo increases, just saying it again, your protein synthesis when you do it immediately after your workout.
So that's awesome, right? Because a lot of coaches in here, they know what they've been taught in NCI is, carbohydrate protein immediately post-workout. And we talk about the role of the carbohydrates to shut off the nervous system effect. Like we don't reference it from glycogen resynthesis because as we know, it ultimately will take place whether you have those carbs or not over the next day. As we just learned, it's going to be faster if you have them in that post-workout window. We don't really talk about the role of the protein there. I think everybody thinks about it just in terms of like generation of new lean tissue. As you just said, mixing the protein with the carbohydrate is going to enhance protein synthesis 300%, which is extremely statistically significant. And I think that's a really good point. So when your clients ask you, guys, why do I have to have protein with the carbohydrate? Well, that's why. Because we want to enhance the rate of protein synthesis. We want to decrease your risk for catabolism. And as we know, more lean tissue, more metabolic activity, higher BMR. So we definitely want to preserve that precious lean tissue.
More trophies.
More trophies. More podium.
More trophies.
More podium finishes. We like that.
And I'm going to note too, because it's about timing, but they made sure to say in their discussion that you need to eat before you work out as well. Yeah. So please do that and tell your clients.
So what we recommend is about 90 to 120 minutes pre-workout. We recommend a protein carbohydrate feeding. Now we like to keep it lower in fat because we actually want to have you go into the training session as close to fasted as possible so that cortisol can rise very quickly. But there's an interesting stat in this study that actually talks about the quantity of protein pre-workout. Do you want to reference that number?
Yes. And I will say, however, like for all of you coaches who probably are way better athletes than me, because you're actually athletes, the timing does matter. The timing matters when you're in better shape. So this stuff's really important for clients who are already engaging in CrossFit and exercising. Did you lose me? My internet is unstable.
Well, mine is too, but we're good. Okay. I got you.
So yeah, it's actually, this stuff is really important to apply to your clients who are engaging in physical activity, who are training, because it matters more when someone's already in shape than someone who's just, I went to the gym on Sunday and then I watched Seinfeld repeats on Hulu all week.
That sounds like fun though.
Obvi. Okay, I'm going to read this verbatim because it does essentially have like a few sentences to give direct instructions for someone who's like, well, exactly?
Let's hear it. Lay it on us.
What do we tell my clients? All right. With that said, high quality protein at 0.5 grams per kilogram of lean body mass with both pre and post exercise is a simple, relatively fail-safe general guideline showing maximal acute anabolic effect. And pre and post exercise meals should not be separated by more than 3 to 4 hours, given a typical resistance training lasting about 45 to 90 minutes. So got that, guys?
Wait, say that last sentence again, because that's super important.
Pre and post exercise meals should not be separated by more than 3 to 4 hours, like the upper level of the limits.
Guys, pre and post workout meals should not be separated between 3 and 4 hours. So what we typically recommend is 90 minutes to 2 hours before you train. And that's perfect because we're under the assumption that most workouts are 90 minutes to 2 hours. Now, the question we get all the time is, well, what happens if someone's doing a marathon session, like 3 to 4 hours? So what we know from this research, guys, and this is amazing data, is around that 90-minute to 2 hour mark, you should probably consider having your client take a small rest, get in some sort of liquid nutrition, because at that point you're losing the optimal response and the optimal adaptation to training. I think that's super important. I love that. Like, that's such a good piece of data.
So if you guys can take notes, just that the math part, 0.4 to 0.5 grams per kilogram is the amount you would want to weigh your food for someone to eat pre and post exercise.
I love that.
Be like measuring out your snack for someone who actually exercises and trains and actually needs this information to increase their physical performance.
I think, well, and it goes to show, right? Like, those are numbers for performance. Obviously, our athletes or, our clientele that gives zero fucks about performance, that just
Jason, I can't believe you said fuck on the internet.
Oh, you haven't listened to all my content. You clearly don't know me. And everyone that's listening to this right now is laughing because they're like, wow, he's only dropped the F-bomb one
time.
Right? Like, that's really the joke. So, but that being said, like, there's people that will come to us that really give zero fucks about their performance, and they just want to look good, right? They want to look better. They want to feel better. And so obviously at that point, nutrient timing means absolutely nothing because we don't care about the rate of glycogen synthesis. We don't really care about muscle protein synthesis. We don't care about optimal adaptation from resistance training. Like, we care about getting their calorie burn up, like their levels of exercise activity and non-exercise activity, right? We want those levels higher so that we're creating output, creating a deficit. So that's a really good stat. I love that. Do you have anything to wrap up on that piece?
I guess don't exercise while fasting. Eat something within the hour.
Ooh, that's a really good one. So don't exercise while fasting.
Yes.
And so tell us why not, and let's tell people how we can mitigate that. Because I think that's a debatable topic, right? Like, I will freely talk about my views there. But talk to us about that.
I'm looking for my notes on stuff, but essentially what happens is your muscle is going to break down because if you go through that glycogen and then you need fuel. Fasting and doing heavy resistance training causes it's called proteolysis. You break down your muscles and gluconeogenesis will take place.
So do we think that a branched chain amino acid is sufficient to offset that fasted state? Or do we think we need to be ingesting some sort of high molecular weight carb with the BCAA to truly offset the fasted state?
That's a really good question. I do think, everything here suggests that doing the protein carb, I'm seeing if I can find a good quote for you guys. Thus, in the case of resistance training after an overnight fast, it would make sense to provide a nutritional intervention dealing in the form of a combination of protein and carbohydrate for the purpose of promoting muscle protein synthesis and reducing proteolysis, thereby switching to a net catabolic state.
Interesting. So, guys, if you have people that train, this study directly says high molecular weight carbs plus some sort of protein. So I would talk about amino acids. I don't really think you need protein that close to training, like actual whey protein or anything like that. I would say high molecular weight carbs with aminos, pre-workout, perhaps 30 minutes. Now, there's more research out there that I've cited before that shows that same high molecular weight carb plus amino in a fed state, right? So if you had a meal 90 minutes to 2 hours before training, that's actually going to have zero anabolic effect and zero performance effect. So I just got told my internet connection was unstable again. But here's the cliffhanger, and I think this is an amazing place for us to wrap up today. I think next month's research review, I think one of the studies that you and I should aim to find is to talk about nutrient intake or lack thereof, and what the best case scenario would be for training in a fasted state. I think we should see if we can find evidence that BCAAs are effective in a fasted state. My dog agrees, by the way. So I think we should find evidence if BCAAs are effective in a fasted state, or if high molecular weight carbs pre-workout are effective. And I think that should be our goal.
So basically, everybody just saw you give me my next homework assignment.
Yeah, that's fair. Like, I'm going to have you pull those because you have access to the journals I don't. But that's going to be what we're going to discuss next month here in the Inner Circle.
Okay. And next time I can say, like, fucking balls and not be nervous about that?
You can say any word you want in the Inner Circle. It's a safe place. It was built with freedom in mind. So...
Well, fucking balls. That sounds awesome. Great.
Fucking balls. Amanda and Jason are out. Guys, thank you so much for tuning into this one. I hope you got a lot out of it. We posted the links below this video to the studies so you can download them, cite them to your clients, send them out as you need, post them on social media. Guys, use this information. Use it to establish your own credibility. Use it to establish your own knowledge. But again, anytime you guys as coaches can go out there, talk about studies that are being done, talk about practical application, you're creating that expert positioning that we always talk about to continue winning in a crowded space. So that's why we're bringing you this info. We're helping educate you. You're helping educate your clients. Collectively, we're moving the world forward. I love it. I'm fired up. We're recording at 6:45 on a Sunday night, and I'm about to eat some pasta. No, that's anabolic.
But that's okay. I don't even like them that much.
Wait, what did you say? The Patriots are losing?
What?
Oh, I thought that's what you said.
The Celtics are kicking ass. They won 15
Celtics are kicking ass.
games in a row.
They are kicking ass.
I think that's what I said. They beat the Golden State Warriors. Yeah.
They did beat Golden State. So, all right, cool. Well, guys, that is the first research review ever. Amanda, thank you so much for your time. And we will see you guys next time.